Hey guys, and welcome to the first interview episode of the podcast. This week's interview is Dennis Austin, one of my film professors from Confederation College in Thunder Bay, while I attended film school there for 2 years, from 2010 to 2012. I thought Dennis was always very insightful. He always knew what to say when you were feeling down. He always told great stories in class, whether they were his stories or a friend of his, something like that. But I always found him to be a great storyteller, and so I always wanted to get some type of recording of his. So luckily I was up there again a year later from graduating, because a friend of mine in the year before that was graduating, of course, this year. And at the end of every year they play all the student films in a big type of community hall, in a sense, to all the city. And luckily for the past 2 years, they've been able to play them at the Silver City Movie Theater in Thunder Bay, where literally you don't pay anything. You just show up. It's free movies. And yeah, you just enjoy the stuff that we've been working on all year. So this interview went a little bit shorter. I wish it went a little bit longer, but I'm very grateful nonetheless. We talked for just over 20 minutes. This was the day after film night. And I know Dennis was kind of busy with students. Students were kind of walking in and out. You'll kind of hear people walking in and out because we did this right in their office there. But yeah, we got cut a little bit short because Dennis was a bit busy with other students around, just trying to get their projects done in time because they were due within the next couple days. But I was really grateful for talking to him, and I think he gave a great conversation for the 20 or so minutes that we got to talk. And then at the end, Lee Chambers comes in. He was kind of coming into the office. He's going to be on our next episode. But yeah, so that's where the interview kind of just ends. There's no real formal ending. But yeah, it was a great talk with Dennis. We talked about everything from what inspired him to get into the film industry, all the way to life after film school and the kind of film business that's around today. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy, and stay tuned for the next episode. It'll be posted here on the YouTube. But yeah, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy it.
So he's having a hard time. It blew up. Mm-hmm. You got to stop looking at where it blew up and come up with something else.
Yeah.
If you just stand there and stare at the disaster,
mm-hmm.
you're kind of beat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. You can look at it for a minute, but you got to stop looking at it and think of something else.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I just started recording now. So
okay.
Start recording. So yeah. So if you just want to. I'm here with Dennis for my podcast here. We're interviewing he was a professor of mine in film school the last 2 years. I've been out of school for a year now, so I haven't seen him in quite a while, and just going to catch up and kind of find out why he got interested in the film industry and stuff like that. So hello, Dennis.
Hey man, how are you?
I'm not too bad. Yourself?
Good. And so you've had an interesting year?
Yeah, it's been interesting, that's for sure, yeah.
I think the first couple of years when you're getting started in film, it's always been problematic, difficult, and,
mm-hmm.
and sort of can be very frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what happens to lots of people is they, after 2 years, a lot of people get out, mm-hmm. because the chaos, and it feels like you're just not getting somewhere.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I think anybody who's in film, if you ask them about 2 years after school, they came to this point, it's like a crossroad. Mm-hmm. And the only advice I can give you is don't quit, because everybody got there and got stuck. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what to do, and nothing seems to be getting any better. Mm-hmm. But something will happen as long as you don't quit. Mm-hmm. So there's a crossroads 2 years after school.
Yeah, I kind of hit that point. Not necessarily that entire crossroad, but for a while after film school, I wasn't really doing anything, just because I was kind of... I think it was because in my mind, it was kind of, I was trying to prepare myself to go back to school, because I've been in school for 20 years straight. So in your mind, it's like, oh, I'll just go back to school in September. And then when September rolls around and your friends are gone and you got nothing else to do at home, yeah. That's where the creative juices start.
See, there's a big thing about after school too, because from what you said, it's true. We're like, normally we're in school all those years, and then you go to college or university or trade school or whatever you've done, and now your world is going to be different. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be back to school. It's not that kind of regimented schedule. It's just different. And that's something I think schools maybe don't don't do a great job at is preparing people to think, okay, when this is over, life is different, and it's actually better. It's actually much more interesting, and it's better, but it's like really different because come September 1st, you're not, you know.
Yeah, you're not going into class.
Yeah, it's like you're kind of off the trolley tracks in a way, you know.
Yeah.
You're like now you're going cross country.
Yeah, without a map, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's a big adjustment, is to get your own direction, to get a sense of what it is you're doing, and that's true. I think in film, and I can't say for certain if it's true in all other professions, but certainly in film, because you're going to be like sort of self-employed by and large.
Yeah.
And things are going to change, and you're going to have to adapt, and there isn't a map, you know.
Especially for this kind of work, yeah.
Yeah. If it was like going to work in a factory, but if in any industry that was having a hard time, so even if you were in a trade, let's say you're in one of the construction trades, electrician, plumber, steam fitter, anything, and the industry was just in a terrible shape. Now you're scrambling, doing all different kinds of stuff, trying to adapt your skills, trying to find a way, trying to earn a living, all of that. When the world is good, I mean, if you're an electrician, because my nephew, talked to my nephew, he just became a journeyman electrician. When there's lots of work, it's like the path is clear. But if you're at a time when there's no work and you're scrambling and you're scrambling around, trying to find stuff, well, that's how it is to be a filmmaker, even on the good times.
For sure, yeah.
There isn't a plan, there isn't a route. Things will change, and then the other thing that can happen in a lot of fields is you got to start, and about 2 years in, you go, yeah, it's kind of like what I thought it would be, but I'm not sure the way it is what I want to do. And so then my advice for that is, well, then just change how you're doing it. Like if say, for example, you had this thing to be a filmmaker, and then you got started and you got work on features and you were getting PA jobs and stuff like that, and after a couple of years you feel kind of restless, or you're not sure about it, or well, then just change the kind of films you're working on. Maybe if you're working on big stuff, try working on small stuff. If you're working on fiction, try working on nonfiction. If you're just trying to put your own projects together, then go work with some other people. If you've just been working on your own and you feel kind of like a dead end, well, then go work on features. So that's what I'm saying, that 2-year thing, where you feel like, oh, I don't know about this anymore. Well, then just change it. And I'm saying that based on my own experience. There was I'd hit a point about 2.5 years after I'd finished school, and the industry at that moment in time was just horrible. All the feature industry had just died in Toronto, and I mean there was like 2 commercials being shot all year, and that was it.
Wow.
It was just awful. This was in the 70s. And so you're just scrambling for stuff, and then so I was piecing together work on this and work on that. And I felt like giving up because I was just getting tired of, I was losing my ability to go out and hustle up all these small half-day, one-day jobs. And I was thinking about packing it in. But then I got, a bit of work here and a bit of work there, and then an opportunity came along to do something. I got offered a project to work on, and I almost didn't take it because it meant leaving the city to go work outside of the city. But at the last minute, I'm not sure why I decided to do it, but it was the best thing. And then I went off and started working with other people in other environments and different kinds of projects. And it just opened up a whole new world. And I was busy and delighted for the next 10 or 12 years. And then I had to do a kind of another rethink then. But like there was 10 years, I was just going from one thing to the next and loving it all. I mean, it was all interesting, and it wasn't I wasn't getting filthy rich, but I was at least making a living and paying the rent and bought a little house. And so 2 years after school, the confusion can get to you, but don't quit. And then if something isn't working, you got to have the courage to change it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. Because I know I've had a lot of students here that had talent, had a certain gift for the work, but couldn't stand the film business.
Yeah.
So I've come to realize that filmmaking is wonderful. Mm-hmm. Film business, not so much.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's why I found too, like, when the first couple months after I finished as well, I was applying to all these jobs in Toronto through production houses and stuff like that. But no one wants to pay you. Everyone wants you to be an intern for 3 months and then see if they'll hire you on. But from the reputations most of those places got as well, is they'll keep you on for the 3 months for free work, and then they get rid of you and bring on the next guy for 3 months type of thing.
Yeah, that's... The idea of going to apprentice with somebody, I sort of believe in that, but I like it, the model of you think of somebody whose work you really admire, whether they're a writer or an editor, a cinematographer, a gaffer, somebody who does effects or makes props or paints or something, and you find out whose work impresses you, and you find that individual, mm-hmm. and you go and you apprentice with that person. Now that means you're going to make as close to zero pay, and then you're going to be doing some grunt work for that person.
Yeah.
But it's a different thing than just going, oh, I'll work for free for X amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
That if I give you enough free work, eventually you'll give me work.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of apprenticing or to work with a master or something, like that's an old school thing. I mean, carpenters used to do that.
Sure, yeah.
Wheelwrights, cabinet makers, all the trades.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Because you're gaining something from this master. I think the those placements or whatever you want to call them, they've gotten to be exploitation a lot of times. Maybe not all the time. Maybe we've all got to work some stuff for free. Mm-hmm. But 3 months seems like a long time. But the model now I hear in the States, and this is for journalism, and the writers, the journalists are the most abused in this, is that the standard internship in journalism is 2 years. 2 years.
Non-paid 2 years? Wow.
No guarantee of work after. But I've just read this somewhat recently. And people are so desperate to get into the trade to get the work. Mm-hmm. But that just, I don't know, that kind of beggars the imagination.
Mm-hmm. Like, it's not the pay that I don't care about the pay, but at the same time, you're trying to live in a city city like Toronto, where it's expensive to live there, right? So I would just love to get paid just enough to live there. I don't care about the extra pay and stuff, but it's hard to do that when they want you to work there 3 months, do a ton of work for them while you have to find another job on the side.
Yep.
Yeah.
To live, to get around, to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then if it was a promise of work, it's like if you had met some people and they'd said, well, look, we've definitely got this gig that will start a couple months, 3 months from now. Mm-hmm. But what we've got to do is we need this location, or we're going to make a kind of a studio setup here. Mm-hmm. So if you want to come in and help build sets or to renovate this space to work on, or then you're working towards that project. But that internship thing, like, I don't know what the alternative is. Maybe getting together with some other people and doing a project. But I know it can be really frustrating all your life, and even at this point, people would still approach me, and I haven't heard it in a couple of years, but you're well along in your career, and people will call up and say, "Oh, well, there's this thing, and I was wondering if you could do this, this film about this thing, and I really can't pay, but it's really important to them." And then they'll say this thing, well, it would look good on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, well,
that term is thrown a lot.
Yeah, it'll look good on your resume. But if you were a plumber, they wouldn't come up to you and say, well, look, I want you to come out and build my cabin, my cottage for me. But I'd really prefer not to pay you anything. But you know what? It'd be good good on your resume.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I mean, people don't do that with other trades. But it's surprising how many calls I get or contacts that they want free work, but and there's free work where it's, you know, for the greater social good. It's for a cause or you know, a non-profit or something like that. Okay, that's certainly understandable, especially when the person asking you is also a volunteer in it.
Yeah, exactly.
But the ones that get to me are the people that want you to volunteer to work for free, but yet they're paid.
Mm-hmm.
They're collecting a paycheck, but they want you to work for free.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a volunteer organization or it's doing some social kind of thing or environmental work or something like that, that's cool. And then if you can do it, then you'll help if you can. But when it's some organization, and that happens surprisingly a lot, mm-hmm. and we'll be approached, say, oh, your students could do this, and it'd be, you know, but they want the students to volunteer their time, and they don't understand also, at least in this, it's not like you're asking me for an afternoon mm-hmm. or a couple of hours of help.
Yeah.
You're asking me for weeks of, you know, to make a film, you might be, who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
It might be a month of steady work. It might be 6 weeks. Might just be a few days, but
mm-hmm.
more likely it's a lot of time. And then they won't want to put any kind of resources in it, like to get the people you need or to get the equipment you need or anything else. So,
mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of a throwaway thing. Oh, we made a video. Nobody wants to see it. So then you would have volunteered your time for almost for nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I find that a lot too. Is where, maybe there'll be an ad out there saying, oh, we'll pay you, but you have to have your own equipment, and the pay is like nowhere necessarily. Like for example, I see stuff on Craigslist all the time. It's like, we're looking for a cameraman to shoot something for us. You have to have your own equipment. We can only pay you around $200. A guy like that who owns that type of equipment, the camera body alone for that camera is like 20-something, 2,500 around there, something like that. And so usually most people won't respond to something like that. And but people, like I did 2 weddings, for example, last summer. I shot 2 weddings. I edited and shot them both for $200. Like I kept it really low. There's people in my town who literally charge 10 grand. I'm not sure what the prices are up here, but there's a videographer in my town who charges 10 grand. But when I told the people 200, I shot it on a 7D. It had some nice lenses to shoot in low light and everything like that, and they still were hesitant about the $200 paycheck.
Yeah, that's when I was saying that people want, oh, this look good on your resume. It's very often a wedding. It's like, that's not the kind of work I do, and there's people that are good at it, but yeah, you have to pay them.
Yeah.
And like I know some guys, and they're just good at that genre or that type of filmmaking. I'm you know, I'm nothing much when it comes to doing wedding videos. But they want it for free, and then say, oh, it'll look good on your resume. It's like, oh, I'm not interested at all. And I also, this is your own personal thing, and you're calling me and you want me to line up students to do your wedding video for free. And you have this breakthrough. It's like, well, I'll just call the college. Mm-hmm. And then, like, I did a favor for somebody in a film like 5 years ago, so I'll call in this favor. Yeah, you helped out for something, maybe for an hour, and you want somebody to go shoot a wedding, which is days of work,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
with equipment and multiple people, and lots of pressure and lots of stress and all that kind of stuff. And it's just like, well, I had this great idea. I was thinking, you know, I'm going to let your students, there's this opportunity. They call it an opportunity, mm-hmm. that for your students to, and the opportunity is to do a wedding video for free.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what, if you even just came out and said, look, I'm broke, or I just don't want to pay for a wedding video. Do you have any kids that would be interested in doing it for free? I know I'm ripping them off, but that, so be it.
Yeah.
At least to be
direct.
Don't try and convince me you're doing me a favor by letting me line up 5 kids and a bunch of equipment and a bunch of this and that, so we can do your wedding video for free. And then it's like you're doing us a favor.
Yeah.
Because you're, yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. But we've mostly talked about business. And we talked a bit about what it was like after you came out of school. Like, what kind of influenced you to go into the world of film?
Almost by accident. I'd started off in high school. So this is going back a long time. Like, I'm kind of old, so
Yeah.
it goes. In the '60s, you kind of had two streams. One is to find your own way, or to go to university. And so I was in that kind of stream that went to find your own way. The hippie thing. So I went hitchhiking and traveling. Lived on some communes. Built a log cabin in Nova Scotia, and did 101 different kinds of jobs, and then just went traveling and went prospecting and did all, I don't know, worked on farms and boats and prospector's license and factory. I just, whatever I could think of, whatever was of interest, so just kind of wandering. But in high school, I'd been in a band, and so I had that experience.
Yeah.
And the reason I stopped or not wanted to pursue being in a band was some guys that I was in a band with right after school, they went off and lived on a farm like a bunch of hippies out in the hills.
Yeah.
And formed a band. And at some point I traveled over to see them, and they were so good. And I mean, they were so incredibly good. And the two guys that I'd played with, the drummer and the guitar player, I was just amazed at how good this band was and how talented they were. And I realized, I have some skill to play, but it's not like these guys.
Yeah.
These guys got a different kind of gift. And so then the idea of being in a band is just like, I'm not that interested in it because I can see a limit to it. I would only be able to accomplish certain things. And then I stumbled into theater and did that for a few years and went to clown school and worked here and there. And it was kind of the same thing. I was having to get this thing in New Brunswick, and I was working at a theater there, and there was other actors, and just this one day I just went, oh God, these kids are really talented actors. I mean, there's some special thing that they can do. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, gee, I think I don't have that gift. I don't have the same kind of gift that they've got. So then it felt like there was a limit to what I could do, and then I just wasn't interested in it anymore. And then I wasn't sure what to do, and then just kind of logic said, well, if I liked music and liked theater, and I liked traveling around, and was interested in lots of different stuff, and I just thought, oh, if you were a filmmaker, you get to sort of use everything.
Yeah.
Music and theater and geography and science and social stuff and the environment and the ocean. I mean, whatever you're interested in can be incorporated in a film. So it was just kind of a logical thing.
Yeah.
And then film just stays sort of fascinating because you at different points in your life you get interested in sort of different aspects of it. It might be technical at some point. It might be more of the literary nature of filmmaking. It might be the traveling part of it. It might be the image part, the editing, the effects. I mean, your interest can shift and change because it's such a broad field.
Yeah, there's so many little things that you could do to be a part of it, yeah.
So the work was by and large pretty interesting. It's not as easy as people would think. It's more difficult because stuff doesn't work and it fails and blows up and goes wrong. But the work was really interesting. The business part of it can be tough, where somebody doesn't keep their word on something, or you don't get paid for something, or you thought you were going to get something and at the last minute it falls through. So that stuff is difficult.
Yeah.
The work is fine.
Yeah, the work is great, yeah. Was there any big influences on you in terms of directors or certain movies that kind of stood out where you kind of clicked in, was yeah, that's what I want to do?
Some stuff that just knocked my socks off. I think the first film I saw, there was this, boy, I hope I can get it right. There was this filmmaker, and he was originally from Australia or Tasmania, something like that. and his last name was Borsos. And he did, his first film was called Nails, which was a short film. So I saw that shortly after it was done, and then I just always remembered it because it was just so different. It was so interesting. And then his second film was this film called Spartree, which is like maybe the best short film that was ever made.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And so seeing those two films, it just, the beauty of the work. And to see that guy's gift to do those films. So those happened just, I don't know, maybe at the time I was thinking of going to school or something. I saw the first one, and then while I was in school I saw the second one.
Now, how did you go about seeing those? Because like today, of course, internet's around, so there's short films around every corner on YouTube, but they're a little bit different back then.
Yeah. When I was thinking about it, you maybe had to dig a little harder, but what I did was I would go to the library, and they'd have, in those days, actually have films on reels, and they'd have row and row of them, and lots of them were old, 20, 30 years old. But you could rent a screening room, and I would go in and book out, got to know the librarian, and I looked at every film, wherever I was, I looked at every film they had, and I did that in Toronto, I did it in Kitchener.
Oh, okay.
When I was going to school in Kitchener, and there was a library not far from where I lived, and I got to know the librarian, and almost every other night, I'd say, I go down to the library, book the screening room for an hour and a half, and just took films off the shelf. So even if they're crummy films, I could learn something from it.
Yeah.
And then I found the section of books that had anything to do with film, and they really weren't that many, and they weren't very good.
Yeah.
But I read every book that was ever written about filmmaking. So, I mean, what information there was. Now you really cannot keep up with the quantity of information.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. Is the internet. Yeah, there's access to all this information. It's too much information. I mean, it's a full-time job.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Into the room came Lee Chambers.
Yeah.
Who's one of my co-teachers here at Confederation College, just back from Australia. So I'm going to give him the chair.
Yeah, sure.
And so,
if you want, you don't have to if you don't want to. I can cut this part out. But basically, I'm just doing an interview with Dennis right now, just asking about his influences, how he got into it, where we talked a bit about the business side of it. Yeah.
it is. It looks like a little R2-D2 guy here.
Yeah.
With a little
It does.
pecker or something. Yeah. Do you want to?
Oh, what am I doing?
Yeah, I'll pause it. Thank you very much, though.